What's up? It's Dan from Code Noobs. And today I want to talk about what is a React component. We want to answer this question. You've probably heard of React components, but you might not be sure what they actually do. So today we're going to break down what React components are in simple terms and look at a brief example. So React components are the building blocks of React applications. With props and state, they can be dynamic and interactive. So in React, a component is a reusable piece of code that represents part of the UI. For example, a button, a navbar, or even an entire header section can be a component. Imagine components like Lego blocks. Each block can stand alone, but together they create a larger structure. So components make it easy to build, organize, and reuse parts of the UI across the app. So some of the benefits of components are reusability. You build once, use anywhere. Components allow you to reuse code, reducing duplication and saving development time. It's really helpful. So a button component can be reused across different pages with different labels or actions. Maintainability. It's easier to manage and update, right? Each component is isolated, so changes in one won't affect others. And if you update, for example, like a header component, that change automatically applies across all pages that are using it. Modularity. We break down the complex UIs into smaller, manageable pieces, making it easier to understand and troubleshoot. Components like navbar, sidebar, and footer keep the code organized and focused on specific sections. And this is an important one, abstraction. We simplify development by hiding complex logic and exposing only essential functionality, making code cleaner and more intuitive. And on the issue of abstraction, in React, abstraction means creating components that are simple, reusable, and focused on a specific task. For example, a button component only handles how a button looks and behaves without worrying about where it's used or what action it performs. Think of abstraction like a TV remote. You press buttons to get results without needing to understand the inner workings. By hiding internal complexities, we can build larger apps by combining simple, well-defined components. Each component has a single responsibility, making it easier to understand, test, and maintain. So types of components, functional components, these are simple functions that return JSX. That's React syntax for HTML and JavaScript. For example, you get a const header equals, you have an arrow function, it returns a level H1 header with the word welcome exclamation point. A class component is based on JavaScript classes and more complex, often used before React hooks. So class components are really falling out of fashion. All developers usually use functional components now in modern development. So for modern React, you should start with functional components. They're simpler and widely preferred. So props, they're short for properties, are like arguments you can pass into a component to customize it. Think of props as ingredients for a recipe. You change the ingredients and the final dish looks a little different. Props are important because they let you reuse components with different data, making your code cleaner and more adaptable. State is data that changes over time within a component. State is like a chalkboard. You can update what's on it, and the component will react to those changes. For example, you can use state to create a button that tracks how many times it's clicked by updating the click count. So let's look at how a component can display a user's name passed as a prop and track how many times a button is clicked using state. We'll call this the greeting component. It takes a name as a prop and uses state to count button clicks and update the value displayed. It will ultimately look like this when it's rendered. So here you see the code. This is the greeting component. I'm writing this in Next.js, so it might look a little different from basic React. I have a client directive up here because that's a Next.js thing. But here you see I'm importing the useState from React. I define my arrow function greeting. Name is going to be our prop that we're passing in. We set the state for count here at a default or a starting value of 0, and we have a set count here that allows us to set or update that value for count. Here you see at line 10, I have an H1 level header, and I say hello, and then I inject the prop here name. So when we pass that value in, it'll dynamically be rendered here. And in our button, you see our button has the you clicked count times. So when you first render this, it'll say 0 because that's what count's initially set at. And for a function for the button for the on click, it's an arrow function and it's set count plus 1. So count 0 now. So when you first click it, it'll add 1 to 0, which is 1. You click it again, it'll add 1 to 1, which is 2, and so forth and so on. Here we see where I'm importing the greeting component and using it in my app. This is just a basic page in Next.js. And so it'll be rendered there. And I'm also passing in the value Danny for the prop name. So when you render this, it says hello Danny, and you get the you click 0 times on the first render. Now, in this case, I've clicked it 6 times. So you see, you click 6 times. It's pretty cool. Makes it really easy to pass data around and really easy to make dynamic components. Components are building blocks. Props make them flexible and state keeps them dynamic. Hope you guys liked this little introduction to React components. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more web development tips. Thanks.